Good day, folks. I'd like to talk today about the solid-state electrolytes versus the traditional electrolytes. As many of you have noticed lately, I've been focused on the pure potential differences between two plates and whatnot, building variants of Bedini's crystal batteries to Zamboni piles and Hutchinson-like power cells and everything in the in-betweens. And I've been doing a lot of deep research and study and experimentations lately in this stuff because I'm really starting to think that this perhaps is the direction for what we're seeking in, our energy triggers to kickstart our other machines, such as our oscillators or Bedini devices or whatever it is you're looking for as a low-level trigger. If we don't want to depend on solar, wind, or any other intermittent, even ambient RF is great, but if there's nothing there at the time you want to use it, what's the point, right? So this happens to be a more on-demand, always available input trigger. Let's say if you wouldn't have any normal batteries or anything like that traditionally available. So I wanted to try and make a breakdown between the solid-state electrolytes and non-solid state and explain the minor differences, because there are differences in how the systems interact, and this opens the door to a lot of potential research and a lot of stuff. For some reason, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. People don't seem very interested in all these systems. So let's start with the non-solid traditional galvanic cell like setup. This is basically the high school potato battery setup, usually with a copper and another metal. It could be even tin, whatever it is, a nail. So two dissimilar metal in the potato, and you got your potato clock. This is the non-solid. Oh, I didn't spell that right. S-O-L-I-D. There you go. So non-solid. So basically liquid or gel electrolytes, and the way the galvanic cell traditionally works in its traditional sense, it's mostly the ion movements between the cathode and anode, and it's the connected load through the conductive plates along with the conductivity of the electrolyte that helps balance out this charge so that the system keeps going, the reaction keeps coming over and over again. But the issue with this is as good as it works, it's near free, but it does have a short life due to the chemical reaction of the oxidation and the corrosion naturally. But it does get interested with solid state and even non-corrosive metals because the rules of the game change a little bit here. So moving on to solid electrolytes, which is very fascinating. It could be a crystalline. Bedini did a lot of experimentation with that. Initially, John Hutchison as well. It could be various polymers. It could be various fibers. You got to do your research, either build your own, order your own, or craft your own. And the ions in this case, they don't move freely like they normally would in a traditional liquid or gel type electrolyte. Instead, they depend more on other mechanisms such as hopping the ion movement between sites within the solid state electrolyte. So you get a completely different reaction. But some of the benefits, of course, with the solid-state electrolytes, especially leaning into the Zamboni piles and such, you potentially get a lifetime of reaction out of it. And that's mostly because if we specifically choose non-corroding cathodes and anodes, this really helps the mix. And if it's non-corrosive, we can depend on the regular chemical reaction we would on a galvanic cell. So then you might ask yourself, what's happening in the solid state if that's not the case? Well, the reason it's lifetime is because we, instead of depending mostly on the free ionic movement, with the solid state, or many of them anyways, it becomes mostly an electrostatic potential. Also quantum tunneling. I'm sure you've heard of the term before. And this is what creates the electron flow properties within our cell structure setup here. So very different mechanisms. And when you introduce quantum tunneling, very interesting things happen. We could observe the triboelectric effect as well, which basically, I've explained this before, is there are indeed potential differences in between any materials, conductive or not. The challenge lies, if they're non-conductive, is how to trigger that reaction with a solid state or solid state like electrolyte in the middle, and what composition that will have to react if it's compatible with your two non-dissimilar materials. And of course, how you want to create the conductivity element for your electrical circuit. But the point of it is, folks, and Bedini was right, there is electrical potential in absolutely everything, even the cap of this marker, if you know how to extract the energy out of it. So this is what we're getting at when we start working with crystal batteries and solid state electrolytes. It's a whole different effect, and I say it's much better solid state. So I'm just trying to put the pieces together for you, and I made some research which could maybe clarify a few things here. So basically, to reword what I'm saying here, I got a nice article here. In the language of potentials in the vacuum, as often discussed by Bearden, this process can be seen as tapping into the ambient energy of the environment, where the electron displacement in the subsequent flow represents a kind of energy regauging. This perspective encourages us to look beyond traditional understandings and consider the broader implications of energy interactions and transformations in these systems. From a Bearden viewpoint, the galvanic cell can be a microcosm for exploring larger principles of energy systems, including the potential for asymmetrical regauging in more complex setups. By carefully manipulating the materials and the environment, we might uncover new pathways for energy interactions and conversion that transcend conventional limitations, echoing the vast untapped potentials Bearden often spoke of exploring within the Dirac sea and the vacuum itself. So here we have it, folks. This is definitely in the right direction. And more information, I guess, if you've never heard about quantum tunneling, here it is. Here I have some details of the mechanisms at work. So quantum tunneling and electron transfer. At the interface of two dissimilar materials, electrons can, quote-unquote, tunnel from one material to another, even without a conventional electrolyte present. This process can create a charge separation, leading to a potential difference. Quantum mechanical effects, particularly at the interfaces of these materials, can facilitate such electron movements even in a solid state or dry condition. And then it moves on to the dipole alignment in solid-state electrolytes. Solid-state electrolytes, including certain crystal structures or polymers, can possess inherent dipole moments or can be induced to align to a particular orientation when placed in contact with dissimilar metals. This alignment can create an internal electric field that contributes to the potential difference observed. So this is very good. This is kind of like an electret, but a semi-triggered electret, which happens by the two. So we still get the same effect where we use two non-dissimilar metals, but it's not a corrosion and oxidation effect. Instead, it's more in the quantum tunneling and electrostatic potential, the pure potential differences of two plates, and the electrolyte, the solid state electrolyte in the middle, facilitates that flow where we're able to convert that and measure real potential. So another system at work would be the surface states and work functions. The materials used in such cells have a different work function. The energy required to move an electron from the surface of a solid to a point in the vacuum immediately outside it. The differences in work functions between the materials can lead to a spontaneous transfer of electrons from the material with a lower work function to the one with a higher work function, establishing a voltage. So a lot of vacuum theory here. And with that said, folks, if you're reading between the lines here, if you can come up with a very good solid state electrolyte, you don't even have to depend on two dissimilar metals to create this effect. As long as you have the proper electrolyte mechanism at play, you could use two of similar, as long as you have a conductive path, the quantum tunneling and the electrostatic will make that work. So to explain how that works here, So moving on with this concept, knowing that I could use two of the same metals, now that the exploration lies in trying to find which of those metals will yield the best results. All right, so I came to conclude that we could also use, for solid anyways, two similar metals, which is very interesting because it doesn't work the same way at all. It's more like a reverse galvanic cell at this point, because we're taking advantage of the electrostatic and quantum tunneling of the effects of the solid state electrolyte composition that we're using. So I went on and experimented with this, and I did a lot of research because I really was intent on finding a way with around the home chemicals and whatnot that I could make my own, which will basically cost peanuts. I don't want to spend a lot of money because I really don't have. And I was convinced there has to be something. And sure enough, folks, I found something that was easy to make with my own research, and for some reason it was just me putting the pieces together because I've never found anyone talking about this, showing this as a demonstration, yet it works. So here it is what I've done is I've got the mixture here for my solid state. So it's three different compositions. One of it is regular salt, and I don't want to get into what the two other ones are right now. It's not that I want to keep a secret or anything, but I find that this is really fascinating because I'm going to show you a quick experiment where I mixed this with water, doped it in various soak of materials, paper towel, fibers, and let it dry. And sure enough, it doped it with that layer on it, and it's working very well. I'm able to use two metals of the same and put that electrolyte plate in between, and I get some potential. So this is something very fascinating that I want to explore and show everyone, and perhaps this will spark interest to people who have more access to me with labs and such and whatnot. And who knows, what I'm getting at is this may open the door for me to something greater that I'd like to explore. And it's not to hide and to be secret or anything. I give you all the hints, everything as I go along, but there are certain key things. Even Bedini, what he called, had some certain trade secrets. Even John Hutchison never really quite told us what his secret sauce was for the last of his cells. So, but leaves us a lot of hints. If you understand, you can do like me and just figure it out for yourself. And with that said, I just want to brag for a few days with this. Probably nothing's going to come out of it, but you never know who may contact me, and if something comes out of it, maybe, through commercialization or something, this could be a really game changer. But anyway, it's probably not going to happen. I'm probably just dreaming in color, and within a few days, folks, public disclosure, I'll show you everything. I'll even make it in front of you folks, because like I said, I'm not in it to hide anything, but I realize sometimes if you want to advance in this stuff, there's certain things, especially if you want to go in business with people, that you sort of got to keep, under the hood while you're developing it anyways. So with that said, I'm going to show you the demonstration, which is very fascinating. So stay tuned for that. Well, here is a quick demonstration to show you what I was talking about here. Using special solid state electrolytes, I figured out how to mix a special solution and let it dry, and it converts any basically fiber material that absorbs once it's dried into a solid state electrolyte. So I experimented with various objects, paper towel, and even materials doped in it and dried. And the interesting thing with this method is it's not a typical galvanic, but more of a reverse galvanic action into the quantum tunneling I was talking to, and maybe even a hint of the casimir effect. So because we're using the two similar, non-dissimilar metals, we're able to create a potential difference. So I've got the meter connected, and I'm going to connect the other one here to the top one. Make sure that this metal here doesn't touch the electrolyte here, like this. And when I apply, this is really crude, but when I apply the pressure, you get about 100 or about 0.2. As you see, I'm holding it really good, so I'm not touching it here. Not completing any circuit, just adding pressure because I want to squish the two together to create the reaction, as you see. And what's really interesting is, if I were to do this properly, I get about a volt or so, and two similar metals, usually we do dissimilar. So even like I could try and push it with something to show you it's not my hand triggering it. Here, we'll put the soda can and add all the pressure on there. And when I press on it, see, make sure this one doesn't touch but you need a lot of pressure to squish these cells together. But this is all dry. And this is acting as a solid state electrolyte. It's doped in a special solution which allows this dry action. And it's not the typical free ion flow movement you'd normally get. So this is why this reaction is able to happen by using two similar conductors. It doesn't even have to be metal. As long as it's electrically conductive, the quantum tunneling effects will kick in. So just thought I'd show you a crude example of what I was talking about and hope that will get minds spinning a little.